Good morning. We're at the Air Museum, Palm Springs Air Museum in the library, February 28th, year 2002. And it's my pleasure this morning to be interviewing Norm Cohen, First Lieutenant Norm Cohen, B-24 pilot. So Norm, I'll just swing around here and ask you a few basic questions to begin with, and then you can get into your flying career and whatever else happened over there.
Okay.
Start with, Norm, to give us some background. Tell us about your parents and your grandparents, where they came from, where they settled, and why.
Well, my grandparents came from Russia originally. I have a feeling that my grandfather used to leave. He was a traveling tailor. He weighed about 110 pounds, wringing wet. Anytime they wanted him in the Army, he decided he was not going to be in the Army. And like many other eye problems, so he never was in the service. Actually, when the war started, I was in college in my first semester.
Well, excuse me, if we could just, we'll pick that up. Tell us about your parents' occupations and then what you did as a kid.
As a kid, piano lessons didn't intrigue me. Baseball did. We had a good time. We were kids. We were poor as can be and didn't know it.
You grew up in a depression like most of us
like
did.
Most of us. It was an experience. When the war started, I wanted to enlist, and my father had been in World War I. And he says, don't be in a rush, they'll come for you. Needless to say, I was in college, and the pressure to enlist in the Air Force was quite strong. But I was underage, so my father wouldn't sign. He says, wait a little bit longer. Well, we went through that year of 1942, and finally he said he realized that I said, I don't want to be in the infantry. He had been in the machine gun cavalry, I remember that, and was stationed in Arizona. And he loved it.
Machine gun cavalry.
Right. They had different things to do. But the way I wound up in the Air Force, when the war started, they had federalized the National Guard. So I joined the Illinois State Militia. It was a non-paying enlistment, and all they did is teach you how to march. And they had us crawling through the parks in the mud in the winter. And I said, this is not for me. And I went down with a friend of mine. We took the Air Force exam, and we both passed. He got the highest grade they had ever seen, but flunked the physical. And I was in, and we finished the semester, and I got a 3-day notice to report. And we went to Miami Beach and learned how to march with civilian clothes on. We didn't have uniforms. They didn't have enough
This was 1942?
End of 42. It was really January 43. So they sent us to Miami Beach, and we stayed there for like and they sent us to Johnson City, Tennessee. There were about 85 of us, and all we did there for like 6 or 8 weeks, we got a lot of math and physics and science, and enough to so you knew what you were doing as far as navigation and wherever, whatever. And then from there we went to Nashville, Tennessee for classification of pilot, navigator, or bombardier. From there, we more physicals, and they assigned us to Maxwell Field, Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama. At Montgomery, it was a pre-flight school. It lasted for 9 weeks. At the end of the time, they didn't know where to send us. They had too many trained pilots in training or whatever. So they sent us home for a month.
Really?
We had a month off.
Excuse me, if we could just stop there while you had that month off. I think it's always interesting for the viewers to know what your impressions were of December 7th, 1941, where you were, and what kind of an impression it left on your life.
Well, we were playing Tommy with an uncle, my brother and I. And listen, it left every kid wants to be involved, and it was not any kind of a decision that we couldn't handle. We thought it would be a much shorter war than it was.
Were you in high school or college then?
I was just graduating high school.
Okay. What college did you go to, Norm?
Went to Wright Junior College. It was a junior college in Chicago.
Okay, then after the college at Johnson City, you went to Nashville, and then they sent you home?
No, we
went to Maxwell.
Went to Maxwell.
And then they sent you home for a month?
Well, we were there for 9 weeks, and then they sent us home. I think I was in the best physical condition of my life. We could run 8 miles. And we had the athletic instructors were mostly professional baseball players or football players. And if these guys, they could run you into the ground. But very few guys fell out. They were almost dying before they fall out because they didn't want to get washed out.
Was the backlog in the training because of lack of training facilities?
They didn't have enough training facilities to handle it. But when we came back, we went right to, we were shipped out to Arcadia, Florida. It was Carlstrom Field. We were there, and we flew the Stearman, PT-17.
Just like
which
we have
there
here.
are 3 here. When you're, hey, you had a whole different system of flying. We did have some flying at this Johnson City, Tennessee State Teachers College, but it was only a short time. There was no, you didn't solo or anything. They just took you up for a ride. But when we went to primary, we got like 60 hours of flight time, and you soloed in about 7 or 8 hours. And then you had all the different things that you learn in flying, basic flying. And about that time, you think you're a hotshot. Because we used to go out, we'd fly out over the Gulf. And if you saw that, one day I see another plane down there, and this was a civilian field, but there were 4 or 5 Army officers, flight officers, that gave us the checkouts. And would you believe, I looked down and I see this plane, and I dove at him, you know, monkeying around. I had finished my, all the things that I needed to know there. And we went to, we're ready to leave to be shipped out. And, you know, you had an honor code. I said, did you come within 500 feet of this other plane? And I says, yes, sir. They court-martialed me. And they gave me, restricted to the base for 2 months and fined me $25 a month for 3 months. That was worse than anything else.
You were probably only getting 36.
No, we were getting 75.
Were you?
We were in a high paid. From there we went to Gunner Field back at Montgomery, Alabama, and we flew the BT-13s. And this is where you really saw some things that really opened your eyes. The guys, we had a lot of French students there. They didn't wash them out. They died trying to learn. And then we went from there, we went to Albany, Georgia. And there we flew twin engine AT-11s. And after 9 weeks, we got graduated, we got a commission. And then they were hot for pilots. They needed guys right away. We went from, on the way home, we were released for 7 days in Georgia, traveling to Chicago, to Westover Field, Massachusetts. From there, they assigned us to a crew. I was assigned as a co-pilot, and we went to Savannah, Georgia. Savannah, Georgia, we were there for 9 weeks, did all our overseas training as a crew.
Still in the AT-11s?
No, B-24s.
B-20. Well, you were in the B-24s for that?
Yeah.
Where was that transition made?
Well, we didn't go to transition. As a co-pilot, we were just assigned to a crew. They gave us an airplane, and we were on the way to Savannah. And in Savannah, we did our overseas training and formation and all the required things you should know. Then they decided that enough of this. They sent us to Langley Field, Virginia. They got a brand new plane for us. With the pilot and I, we never saw all the rest of the crew anymore. They sent them over on a ship. We flew over seas from Langley to Dowfield, Maine, to Gander Lake, Newfoundland, to the Azores, to Marrakech.
Just you and the pilot? Did you have a navigator?
Yes, we had a navigator. And he was so scared he didn't know if we were going the right way. But he didn't know that I was tracking it all in the cockpit anyway. And we had radio contact. We knew we were in the right place.
Let's focus in on that B-24 a little bit, and if you want to tell us something about that.
Well, the B-24 was, it was a big transition from an AT-11. And the pilot didn't let me do much flying, really. He made a big mistake. Because when we got overseas, the first thing I told him is I had never flown that plane. I was a toggle switcher. The operation officer took me out for 2 weeks. I learned emergency procedures, close formation, landings and takeoffs. And I never flew with that pilot again. I was not a pilot. We came into a squadron who had been operational for 6 weeks. They trained in Mountain Home, Idaho, and we were the first replacements. The pilot, he went as a co-pilot for half a dozen missions, and I started a little later, but I went as a co-pilot for the first few missions, and then I was with pickup crews. This was a pickup crew.
Should we take a close-up of that photo, Norm?
Yeah.
And you're there on the right-hand side, right by your... I'll just have to get that as close as I can. Okay, now you again point out where you are on there.
I'm the first one.
Right there, okay.
I've lost track of the name of the fellas, but I know all the names. I have them written down.
Okay. Now, this was in England?
No, we were in Italy.
You were in Italy.
Marrakech is in Africa, remember?
I guess I missed that.
Marrakech to Tunis, to Tunisia.
I guess I missed that, I'm sorry.
Foggia.
You were at Foggia?
Foggia was 15th Air Force.
Yeah.
And I started flying, and we were flying quite frequently. I have a list of all the places we went to. There are no such things as milk runs. Somebody always went down. And when a plane went down, that was 10 guys. Many missions were anywhere from 4 to 10 hours. The average was usually 7 or 8. We flew, on our first mission, we went to Linz, Austria. And after I flew several missions as a there was no more co-pilot. I was flying as pilot, and I flew with pickup crews, which this was. And from the 26th of July to the 4th of November, I got my 50 mission credits.
So you were flying?
But I actually only flew 1/3 at the time, because we received double credit for anything that was a longer mission. Not so much a longer mission, but a mission to Germany. We went to Ploesti once, and that was a place that was a scary thing, because the flak was so heavy, it was like a carpet.
I've heard that.
You cannot believe it was a scary thing, but hey, we did it. The pilot who I trained with, we decided we wanted to fly together once. We went down and we asked the operations to assign us together. They said, sure. During the night they changed to a maximum effort, and we didn't fly together. He flew right next to me, and we got to the initial point, and he radios the lead ship that he's running out of fuel. So the lead ship figured, oh, his gauges are wrong, he'll be okay. But you know, he did run out of gas, which we later figured out that he didn't check the engineer to see if he transferred the fuel from the outer wing tanks.
So he had fuel, but he was on the wrong tanks.
Couldn't use it.
Gee.
Because the pumps didn't work when you got over 12,000 feet. And they crashed. He was a PW for almost a year.
What targets could you reach in Germany from Italy?
Well, we went, we went to Linz, Austria. This was a tank plant. We went to Wolfachsing Aerodrome. That was planes. Budapest was factories. We flew one to Genoa, Italy. We went to Friedrichshafen. That was in Germany. Back to Budapest. Then we went to France. Then we started flying. We flew like 5 missions in a row to southern France. And we made Patton made a landing, I think. There was no opposition.
Southern France. Yep.
But even those which were supposedly easy missions, they didn't turn out so easy. It was 9 hours of flying. And the guys they would have problems getting home. Then we went to Ploesti on August 18th. That was, as I said, a very tough mission. Then we even went once to Poland. Long haul.
That was a long flight.
Yeah. And then we had a few to Germany, and we flew to Blackhammer, was oil refineries. And to this day, we never saw or knew who the pilots were the fighters. But we had the P-51s. It was the Tuskegee Airmen that saved us. We only saw fighter opposition a few times because they saved our lives, really.
There's little known about the activities there of the B-24s in Italy because all the emphasis was from England.
Was the
But
B-17, right?
I read the book about George McGovern.
I have it at home.
Have you?
Yeah.
He was at Fonja. And he was on a lot of missions too, and he tells about this flak at Ploesti. But the 8th Air Force got all the glory.
Listen, we survived. That was what was important.
Yeah.
And we won the war.
You didn't happen to run into McGovern. He was
No.
a different bomb group there. I think the 507th, perhaps. I don't remember.
I read the book. I'm going to have to read it again to see if I can come up with it. But he took a much. Now he emphasized that they always flew as a crew, and
yes.
that they didn't fly otherwise. That the rest of the crew didn't fly. There was no such thing. When I was there, we his missions a longer time because of injuries and stuff, but we only had fighter opposition like maybe 3 times. One of them, they beat the hell out of us. They shot down about 8 or 9 planes and damaged 4 or 5 others. One pass, but it was 35 mixed 190 ME-109s and FW-190s. And the flak, was really, the Germans have a gun that's similar, that's the 88 that's outside.
Yeah.
It's like a rifle.
It does have a rifled barrel. This one.
Yeah, and believe me, it was not it was a scary thing because they had automatic fuse cutters we didn't have. And that's how they were able to come up with so many guys shot down.
Yeah, that 88, probably the most effective weapon in the war. We have a Carl Eichner, who's a member of the Victory Squadron here, was a kid gunner on that at Munich. Have a picture of him. But tell us a little bit more about the air cover that the Tuskegee Airmen gave you.
Well, you know, we'd see them in the distance, but the 109s and the German aircraft, most cases, did not have enough fuel, but which we later found out. But really, they saved our lives because they got them before they could get to us.
And they didn't have many losses. They were pretty good pilots.
No, they were good. But there were times where they came chasing them almost right down our throats. But we survived it, and that's what was important.
Did you have any emergency landings?
One. We went off the end of a runway. You just landed a little too hot. They pulled it out of the mud. It didn't damage anything.
How many missions were you on altogether, Norm?
Well, I flew actually 34, but 17 were double credit missions. Anytime you went over a certain parallel, you got a double credit, and it really amounted to when you got over Germany is where you got the double credit. Because when we went to Austria, it was a single credit.
It wasn't quite far enough.
Right.
What was the goal then, the target 50 missions?
50. You got 50 mission credits. And here, now I flew the first on the 25th of July, 1944. And we turned around and went home, didn't get credit for it. I was flying with a crew that had ditched. You ditch in the B-24, that plane breaks up into little pieces. There's no such thing as a soft landing in a B-24 in the water.
Is that because of position of the wing?
I don't think that. You know, the B-24 has a gliding angle like a rock. B-17 you could get a little bit, you know, when your landing was much easier. Down, you cut the power, boy, boom, you flopped right there.
Tell me that the controls were awfully heavy on a B-24.
Yeah, but you had trim tabs that worked very good.
You could get it trimmed out and didn't have to muscle the controls all the time.
Well, when you lost, if you lost one engine, it really didn't affect anything. We had situations one time where a bomb hung up in the rack, and in order to get it out, we had to chop went back with a fire axe and chopped the holder on, and it dropped without, probably buried in some farmer's field.
Probably still there.
Yeah. As long as the pin was in, the wire rather was in, it wouldn't go off.
What was your normal bomb load?
Usually about 6,000.
Is that more than the B-17 could
It's a
carry?
little more than a B-17. I think they could run maybe 4 or 5. But you know, there were 5 B-17 groups in Italy and 16 B-24 groups. And the B-24s that we'd be flying, say, at 20,000. So I read in McGovern's book about him flying 24, 25,000. was so mushy when you had that bomb load in. When you let the bombs drop, the plane livened up because it wasn't so heavy anymore. You know, here's a plane that without all the armament weighed 32,000 pounds. Loaded 64,000.
It's a wonder it ever got off the ground.
Plenty of them didn't.
Is that right?
That's right.
64,000 pounds of fuel and bomb load.
Bomb load.
Wow.
And the turrets, they didn't originally have turrets. And then they used to say, tell us about the flight speed, that they went 190 miles an hour. Only one time you went 190 is when you were diving. We used to go 155 to 160. But we had better engines than the B-17. B-17 has Wright Cyclones. We had Pratt Whitneys.
You had Pratt Whitneys, R-2800s?
I think so, yes.
I didn't know there was a difference in that. So they had the...
And they would be 5,000 feet above us. We'd be catching all the flak. They didn't get any.
What's the most memorable moment you had over there, Norm?
When I finished the missions.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And then we had, they decided they wanted to build a road around the airfield. So they gave us a Jeep, myself and the navigator. We both finished at the same time. And we decided that we would, we had a truck to haul gravel and we had 50 Italian laborers. And they built a crushed rock road all the way around the field. No more mud. So it was a great experience, but I wouldn't want to do it twice.
Were you in Italy when they, the partisans hanged Mussolini?
No, I think that was just before we got there.
Foggia was down the southeastern part, was it not?
Right.
On the Adriatic?
It was about 100 miles from Bari. Bari was the closest big town. You could go through Gioia or Spinizola and not even know you went through. There was nothing there.
Did you fly cover for do some pre-invasion when Patton invaded southern France? Did you do some bombing there?
5 days in a row. We went there. That was on the 15th of August, and here we went. We started on the 6th, then we went back 6 days later to the 12th, the 14th, 15th, 16th. So there was, and even then, it was not an easy mission. There was no opposition. Just drop the bombs on some bridge.
Was there flak?
None. Because they didn't have anything there. It was almost like the back door was open, you might say. And we, but there were planes that went down. They ran out of gas.
Yeah.
If you didn't lean it out enough, you know, it was, they flew loose cover formation because it wasn't necessary.
In a ditching, you say the plane would break up. Just how about a wheels up landing, belly landing, if your gear couldn't retract?
Well, you know, the gear you had, it was on number 3 engine. It was where all your hydraulics were. You had to crank them down if you couldn't, if the engine was out. We did it only a couple of times, so it really was not a problem. But you could fly with 2 engines out. You'd be constantly losing altitude, but you were able to still master it. A lot of muscle. And they turned, you know, holding it. But we got it back. It was a good plane.
How many cranks, how many turns would it take to get that gear down?
I don't remember. Can you believe that? It happened so infrequent.
So if you had emergency landing, you usually tried to get the gear down, you didn't use the gear up landing?
No.
Well, what else, Norm?
When I came back from overseas,
Now, excuse me, how did you get back? Did you fly back?
no, we came back on a converted banana boat. And we got home. They gave us 17 days en route from Brooklyn Navy Yard. Coming back, we came back on in the midst of a hurricane. That ship would go up and down. And I was sure glad I never had to be in the Navy because there were 2 of us. We were 12 first lieutenants in a stateroom for 2.
12 in one stateroom?
Right. But, you know, it had the bunk bed. There was not room to crawl around in there. We came back, and I was kind of semi-engaged, so we got it officially engaged. And they sent us to Santa Ana, California. In Santa Ana, we went to, we were there for a couple of weeks. They took us through the studios and whatever they could to amuse us, really. They sent us back to Cortland, Alabama. Cortland, Alabama. Would you believe our primary work was to, we played pool for 8 hours a day for like 3 weeks.
You used to be a pretty good pool player.
I haven't touched one since, hardly. Then they decided, they offered us, we took a transition, teaching transition into the B-24s. We became B-24 instructors, 9-week course. And from there, that was at Smyrna, Tennessee, which I think today is still an active field. And from there, they sent us to Bryan, Texas, and we flew AT-6s, like the one downstairs. It was an instrument instructor's course. And then, believe it or not, the war started winding down in Europe. It was almost over, actually. And they sent us to Harlingen, Texas. Harlingen, we flew gunners out over the Gulf. And they would come at us. We were teaching gunners. They would come at us with P-39s. They shot plastic bullets. The gunners shot plastic bullets and shot a couple of them down. And then it happened like overnight. They dropped the bomb in Japan. And then the second one, and they said that war is over. We're ferrying the planes to Enid, Oklahoma. And from we ferried the planes there and went back to Harlingen with whatever crews there were. They released us en route to Chicago. house overnight. We drove, there were about 6 of us. We drove from Harlingen to Great Lakes, actually. And that's where they discharged us.
So you were in about 3 years.
Yeah. 35 months, I think so.
35. And you're wearing your original pair of wings there.
Right.
You got to be pretty proud of those.
Yeah, that's one of the few things that I say. The jacket is long gone.
Jacket wore out, huh?
Right.
Well then, upon getting out, what did you do after you got out, Norm?
Well, instead of going to school, believe it or not, I went into the meat business. And I did that for about 17 years. And then I decided I didn't want to be in a one-man business anymore. And I went to work for Sears. I spent 26 years there.
What did you do there?
I was a manager part of the time. But that was in Chicago. When I came west, I went back to selling and did very well. Got a bunch of plaques, best West Coast and stuff
Was this
like
with
that.
Sears? So you liked selling?
Yeah, I did a good job with it.
Were you on commission?
Yeah,
Yeah, that helps.
yeah, that's where the money went.
Well, sure.
I have 3 kids. I have a son who's ready to retire right now.
From,
He's a teacher.
I see.
And the reason we moved to the desert, we don't have any kids in LA. One is in San Francisco and one is in Seattle. One is still in Chicago. And they're all doing fine, they're all healthy.
How did you happen to get out here to Coachella Valley?
Well, we had been here several times and we just got tired of the traffic in LA. And my wife's involved with a lot of charity work and I have this little experience and I play a lot of bridge. We're having a good time.
Did you get involved with the Air Museum here when they were just forming?
No, I've only been in since, it's about a year and a half.
Oh.
Because we only came here in July, will be 2 years.
Oh, I see.
That's a lot of fun.
Now, you work as a docent?
I haven't really, I've been in the library most of the time.
Some question I always ask, what advice would you have for young people nowadays? Say young person, 16 years old in high school.
Stay in school.
Stay in school.
Get an education.
What about joining the National Guard or the ROTC?
Suppose the National Guard would be the way to go. I think they're better off with the ROTC. Because I think the fact that they have a chance to become an officer is a big difference.
If they finish that course, they get a commission, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah, Dick Parker got his diploma and his commission at the same time from Shattuck Military School in Minnesota.
Oh, there you are.
So, What can you think of? Is there anything else that you want to toss in here? We've got plenty of room on those tapes.
I can't think of anything right at the moment. Probably think of it later.
Do you have any more memorabilia there that you'd like to have on the tape?
Well, this is a combat record, but it really isn't. It's the pictures and the stuff, which we already did. I have a list of the names of the fellas, but I don't know any of them out here.
Why don't you just hold that up so I can...
This went through the water in my mother's basement.
Now, who keeps that in the squadron? Who keeps those records?
You know, they keep your A1, your flight records. It's for time. It tells how long you've been, you know, on each flight, whether it's 5 minutes or 5 hours.
Well, is that court-martial on your record, too?
No. Because what happened is, when I went to the next station, we shipped out the next week. And when we were almost finished with the basic course, our flight officer, or TAC officer, says, had us all sitting around on the under a tree, and he said, in every class, they always manage to court-martial somebody for breaking flying regulations. Who was it here? And I very sheepishly put up my hand. He said, this is very important. He said, did you stay on the base? I said, yes. He said, did you get fined $25 a month? I said, yes. He says, well, your pass was in the ready room anytime you wanted it. He says, I never took it. Because I figure if I survived the not getting washed out, I wasn't going to abuse it to make sure.
They were just testing you a little bit.
Right.
How close did you come to that plane that you buzzed? Or didn't you buzz it?
Well, it was in the Army check pod. It had a student. And when I saw two in the plane, I said, oh, God.
So he reported you?
Of course.
Do you have a number on your plane that he would...
Yeah, a number and a time. They can find you, you know.
Yeah, if there's an instructor down there, he didn't take too kindly to that.
No. God, we used to, well, as I said, when you had 60 or 65 hours,
You get pretty bored.
you were pretty, you could do anything with that plane. Now, about 2 years ago, a friend of mine, he says, how about, let's go out to breakfast with the wives. So my wife and I and this other couple, we went out, and he's took me to Whiteman Airport. I don't know if you're familiar with Southern California. It's a small airport. There must be 100 hangars, and at least that many planes. And he took me out to a guy had restored a steerman. Now the steerman, you could do any acrobat flying. It works very good. And we went, I was talking with him, and I told him where I'd been, and he was very interested. And he says, just a minute. And after I was talking to him for about 15 minutes, and he walked over to my wife and the other lady, and he said, did you tell him we're going up in the plane? They said, no, you tell him. So I came back, and he says, how would you like to go up? I said, I'd love it. I said, but I don't have any equipment. I need a suit and goggles and a helmet. He says, I got it all. He threw me a suit and a helmet, and we went out, and we flew over for about an hour.
That had to be fun.
That was fun.
That had to be. Did you put it through some
Well, I didn't do much flying. I held it a little bit, but I remember I hadn't done this for 50-some years. I would hesitate to land, especially with the glasses. And
I don't think you ever completely forget those skills, though.
no, you don't. I was able to do just fine. I didn't wear glasses when I flew. Didn't need them, but you know, the one crutch I do have from it is I need sunglasses all the time. Of course, I have blue eyes, and my wife admonishes me very frequently, what do you need the sunglasses for? It's only a little shady. That about does it, I guess, huh?
Well, Norm, this has been very, very interesting. And what we do now is we give you one of these tapes, and we'll put one in the library, and then there'll be a autobiography, or there'll be a biography written up that will be in the library. And some of this, we hope, eventually makes its way to the Library of Congress. At least they've told us that they want these records, and they'll be put on CD discs.
Well, you know, the World War II veterans are dying 30,000 a month, or more probably now.
Yep. And
It's something that I think it's important to save this.
yes, it is. Question I asked at our American Legion post back home one time, I said, who's going to keep this up? There are no more wars. And this guy who had been through Vietnam, Korea, and World War II, he said, I'd like to be able to close it up. You know, if there are no more wars, you don't need American Legion posts or VFWs anymore. But you're right, the veterans, guys our age, are leaving pretty fast.
Like I have, I'm gravelly because, I don't know whether it's because of it, but I lost a hearing on my right ear. And I didn't just stop there. I went for a couple of other tests, and I had an MRI, and I have a tiny little neuroma. It's so tiny, you wouldn't find it except with an MRI. That's why I lost the hearing in the right ear. Hearing aid won't do any good.
Well, that's too bad.
I'm having another MRI scheduled. This was a year ago. And the doctor told me that if it's not growing, leave it alone. You may have had this for many years. And I already have the reservation to go for it. It's not until the end of March. And if it's growing, I have to have it removed because it's right next to the brain. It's really a little tumor.
Oh.
But he said these are very common, and they don't cause you.
Okay, now the most important part of this interview, probably the most important thing of Norm's career, was the medals that he won. And the Distinguished Flying Cross is one that he's going to read some of the verbiage in this thing so that people watching this in later years will know what the Distinguished Flying Cross was. Norm?
Okay, awards of the Distinguished Flying Cross. Under the provisions of AR 600-45 as amended and pursuant to authority maintained in Circular Number 89, Headquarters, Natusa, 10th of July, 1944. The Distinguished Flying Cross is awarded the following named personnel: Air Corps, United States Army, position, date of act, and residence as indicated, with the following citation. for extraordinary achievement while participating in aerial flight against the enemy in the Mediterranean theater of operations. Throughout many long and hazardous combat missions against vital strategic targets deep in enemy-occupied territory, though confronted by heavy enemy opposition from highly aggressive enemy fighters and intense and accurate enemy anti-aircraft fire, the personnel listed below have consistently displayed outstanding courage, aggressiveness, and intense devotion to duty throughout all engagements. With their aircrafts frequently severely damaged by heavy enemy fire, these men have courageously remained at their stations, battling their way through to their targets to aid material in the utter destruction of the vitally important enemy installations and supplies. Heedless of severe and adverse weather conditions, encountered over rugged mountainous terrain, surmounting many other major obstacles that faced them during these hazardous missions, these men have gallantly engaged and fought and defeated the enemy with a complete disregard for their personal safety against overwhelming odds. The conspicuous and extraordinary achievements throughout these many missions against the enemy have been of inestimable value to successfully combat operations and have repeatedly reflected great credit upon themselves and the Armed Forces of the United States of America. Norman Cohen, First Lieutenant, 779th Bomb Squadron, 464th Group, Chicago pilot, Austria, the 10th of September. Now you received this for a specific mission, which was on the 10th of September.
But you also had 5 battle stars to go along with that.
5 battle stars, plus 2 unit citations. There were presidential citations, plus 3 air medals. It doesn't seem like much on a piece of paper, but it was tough.
Well, I think you're a little modest on this. I just can appreciate how tough it was, and those of us that weren't in combat have no idea. The fatigue, the discomfort, plus the danger that was involved there, we just can't imagine what that was, the tension.
When we think about this, it was really, when you think of the technology today against what it was 60 years ago, I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of what they have today.
But there's still one common problem that you had then and they have now, and that's fuel. You're always
Right.
limited by the amount of fuel that you had.
Right. But we managed and it came through it. That's what's important. And I hope we don't have another one. My kids are too old already to go, believe it or not.
Yeah, but you've got grandchildren, I'm sure.
Yeah, one boy.
Yeah.
Plus there's 4 girls.
Well, again, Norm, thank you very much, and I'm glad that we were able to add on there. You were a little modest about that service record, but I'm glad we were able to put that on there.
All right, then, thank you.